Thank you very much. We're all looking forward to President Putin's visit and welcoming him here in India. As you are aware, India's national capital has had one of its worst terror attacks in more than a decade. Would Russia support India in the event of India taking any action against terrorist bases in Pakistan? And the second question, you mentioned free of those who are trying to interfere with international trade. What is the role of the rupee, ruble, and the yuan in international trade as you see it in the years to come? Thank you.
Well, we strongly condemn terrorism, whatever form of this terrorism and whatever source of this terrorism is. Our country has suffered a lot from the hands of terrorists. And we know the pain of losing people because of acts of terror. And we remember and will be always remembering this pain. And we know that India has faced this threat numerous times, and we stay together with people of India, and we do condemn terrorism. And of course, we think that the only way to combat terrorism is to have an international cooperation. Unfortunately, the divisions that we have now with the European countries limit this possibility for us, but those possibilities are open in alternative directions, like India, like other countries in the east of Russia. So we'll be ready to cooperate with our Indian friends in combating terror. This is number one. And what was number two? I beg your pardon.
The rupee, ruble, and yuan as alternate trade currencies.
Yeah. So the share of dollar is decreasing in global trade. The share of American dollar is decreasing, and the share of national currencies is growing. It's not a fast tendency, but it's a very sure tendency and will continue for coming years. This is our understanding. For example, we prefer to use as much for national currencies in doing trade with our partners as possible. Why? Because we don't like US dollar? No. Because we're deprived of a right to use US dollar. So they simply banned US dollar for our country. So what is our next step? To increase the national currency value. And we're doing that, and it's quite successful. And we found the reciprocal interest in our partners while doing trade. So this share is growing, the share of American dollar is dropping. This is the reality. Now I would say it's a quite a humble tendency, but it seems to be very, very stable, and it will continue, and the tempo of this tendency will continue to be faster.
I just want to add that Rishab Gulat, editor-in-chief, NewsX TV. You forgot to represent. Tak, Dipanjan, please, Economic Times.
Good afternoon.
Chaudhary,
Yeah.
yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Peskov. My name is Dipanjan. I write on foreign affairs for Economic Times. What is the message or that the Russian government would like to give to the Indian investors who have been quite wary of the sanctions, not just in 22, but even before, after the Crimea, to explore the Russian market in terms of investments and trade? How can they learn from some other countries, including in Europe or some elsewhere, to explore the Russian market? And B, during the visit, will there be an effort to link the SFPS with the Indian messaging system? And will there be a discussion on that? Thank you.
we are interested in foreign investments. Russia is continuing to be an open country for foreign investments, and we are ready to create the most favorable conditions for investments coming from abroad and from India as well. We are facing now difficulties because of those sanctions, as you have mentioned. But Indian business, like business of lots and lots of countries, is still demonstrating a great interest towards our economy. And Indian businessmen are still on the Russian market. And they are continuing their presence on Russian market despite all the sanctions. We never give any details not to harm the interests of those businessmen. But they're continuing to work here, and they're continuing to benefit from their presence here. They're earning money, and they're earning good money. So Russian market can be very interesting for Indian businessmen and for Indian investors. We have to work in order to, as I have mentioned before, in order to create a system that will minimize a possibility of interference from third countries. And you have mentioned the system of exchange between banks. Well, the various methods of payments between two countries will be on the agenda. We understandably we will not be able to speak on that. We will not be able to make it public because of the reasons that you would probably understand. But we are continuing to work on that. We are continuing to think together how we have to create a really bilateral systems or a multi.
All right, now I have Gautam Mukherjee, senior journalist, joining me on the broadcast. Now, Mr. Mukherjee, there are a lot of statements that have come in from Peskov, and he's also said, you know, among others, that he supports India when it comes to terrorism. What would you like to say?
Well, coming from Russia, it is quite credible and is most encouraging. And then with Vladimir Putin coming here in the next couple of days, this is a good basis in terms of how they see it as well. For us, it is an absolute scourge internally and externally, and we could definitely use help from a great nation like Russia.
Mr. Mukherjee, what are the other key issues that you think must be discussed during Putin's visit?
Well, top of the list is, of course, defense matters, and the only worry there is if we move too fast, we might jeopardize ongoing negotiations and ongoing pipeline flows from the United States. So we have to be diplomatic and walk the tightrope on it. After that, it is, of course, as usual, increase of trade. There's already talk of increasing bilateral trade to 100 billion, which I think is pretty low, actually. It should go much higher.
Mr. Mukherjee, what's in focus is also the energy ties between India and Russia. What would you like to say on that?
It's ongoing. Yes, we're buying their oil whenever we can, dodging the sanctions as much as we can. Of course, discounted like it is very lucrative for our refineries and for our ultimate buyers, whether they be in India or abroad. So this is good. Gas is another possibility. There is also some degree of talk on joint development of fields. For example, we have to develop the Andaman fields right here in India, as well as fields off Russia and in the Arctic Circle, where large amounts of gas and oil have been found. So in all of this, there is both exploration and development as well as buying the end product.
I also have Major General Sudhakar Ji, who's a defense expert, joining me on the broadcast. Major General Sudhakar Ji. Now, of course, New Delhi was Russia's top seaborne oil buyer despite sanctions. So how do you see that progressing with Putin's visit?
Vishali, good afternoon. Thank you for taking me for your show. Look, to answer your question, I would say it is going to be a thumping success. And it's not ended, it's ongoing. And as far as the question which you are asking, if I have understood the sense and the orientation, it's all related to oil. How much of oil will India buy? Well, just for information of our viewers, let me clarify that in 2020-21, out of the total oil import bill, India was buying something to the tune of 1.6%. 21-22, it rose to 2%. 22 to 23, it rose to 19%. 23 to 24, it was 33.4%. And 24 to 25, it has gone up to 35.1%. However, in September 2025, the import bill of India with regard to the oil being bought from Russia has come down to 31%. So from 41% to 31% in just about a time frame of 9 to 10 months' time, it's a significant improvement. So along with that, our defense hardware dependency on Russia continues to be very, very high. So primarily, I would say S-400, out of 5 batteries that we bought, we have paid for in 2018, 3 batteries are already in India. They were deployed and they were a game changer, a force multiplier in Operation Sindoor. India would like to buy the remaining 2 batteries. They have to be deployed in India at the earliest. Also, India is going in for some additional S-400s and joint development and manufacturing of S-500 in India. So for that, technology transfer is a critical issue for which Russia has already given indication that India can go in for it. But most importantly, since we have our energy target, the nuclear energy, modular nuclear reactors, these are actually going to be another civil nuclear energy production for which we would be requiring Russia's help. Our percentage of dependence on Russia is very, very high. And here is a country, apart from France, which had stood by the needs of India in critical times or otherwise. So this is one field where we would like to jointly put our heads together and manufacture modular nuclear reactors. These are small-sized nuclear reactors, collapsible, transportable, and in order to meet the energy deadlines by 2030 as stipulated by the climate change department. And the last point that I have in answer to your question is that it is all positive, going absolutely in a progressive manner. And I'm very confident and hopeful that this is definitely going to give a lot of dividends and strengthen our strategic partnership.
Major General Sudhakar Ji, apologies for interrupting you, but there's a very pertinent point that I want to talk to you about. You know, our editor-in-chief, Mr. Rishabh Gulati of NewsX, he, of course, put forth a question. And of course, the response that we're getting from Peskov is that he's responded to NewsX's question on alternative currencies. He said the share of dollar is decreasing in global trade, share of national currencies is growing, and this tendency will continue in the coming years. What would you like to say on that?
Yes. So out of a bill of 135.7 approximately dollar, this is $135.7 billion of oil in 24-25. $75 billion have been actually paid in non-dollar currency to Russia. And this $75 billion payment or transaction which is taking place is definitely a hidden agenda, and it is giving jitters to America This is a slow process of de-dollarization taking place, which has not gone down too well in American system. So therefore, why they are coming down heavily with a 25% additional punitive tariff against India is that India, with stopping or reducing our dependency on buying of oil from Russia, this non-dollar transactions also would be reducing. So this is the hidden agenda behind why it is getting after India. The dollarization process has already begun in its slow, incremental manner. However, what is not seen by America, not notice of or cognizance of, is that it is not only India. There are 41 to 50 countries who have started transacting their business, commercial activities in their domestic currencies or the national currencies, I would say non-dollar currency. So therefore, that become a bigger cause of worry because the global south is not being heard, not being responded to by America in a positive and progressive manner, not in an inclusive manner. That should be a bigger detriment and a huge challenge before America if it is to continue to remain as a superpower.
You know, Major General Sudhakarji, we were just showing visuals on the screen. You know, viewers, you could see previously, you know, our editor-in-chief at NewsX, Mr. Rishabh Gulati, in direct conversation with Peskov, and he put in a question to him. And the response Peskov gave was to our editor-in-chief. You know, Peskov condemns the Red Fort terror attack. He says he strongly condemns the source of this terrorism. Peskov also says we understand the pain of terrorism and the only way to combat terrorism is international cooperation. Major General Sudhakarji, what would you like to say for that?
Well, Vishali, I heard, I can see the picture now. I have switched off my TV because I am talking to you. I could see the picture of Rishabh. I have full faith and confidence in Rishabh Gulati. He is one of the brilliant chief editors of the multimedia, mainstream media of India. I'm sure he has a sense and orientation when he's asking questions. But the response which the spokesperson of Kremlin has given, we admire and appreciate that they are in and the side of the peace, in the side of the India's philosophy of fighting the terrorist activities inside the subcontinent and outside as well. And we totally agree with what Rishabh Gulati has suggested or asked for the act of form. But what needs to be done? That is a big five. It's a P5 country. I think a lot more needs to be done amongst the P5 to legislate a particular counter strategy to firstly identify, give a terminology of definition of terrorism, and have a counter strategy in place as a global menace. How to handle it effectively in a time-bound manner for which all countries have to come together. I am afraid that the superpower today, which is very badly infected and infiltrated with all kinds of jihadis inside the mainland of US, is unaware or not taking the issue with a serious cognizance. It's about time that they realize that another 9/11 may take place in a very, very unfavorable manner. Therefore, they need to play the act well together with everyone, every stakeholder in the world to fight against terrorism in an effective manner with a consolidated and mutually accepted counter-strategic framework at the United Nations level.
All right, I also have Ambassador Gauri Shankar Gupta. He's a former diplomat who's joining me on the broadcast. Ambassador Gauri Shankar, our editor-in-chief, Mr. Rishabh Gulati of NewsX, is in direct conversation with Dmitry Peskov. He's the press secretary of the President of the Russian Federation. And our editor-in-chief, Mr. Rishabh Gulati, has raised some very pertinent issues. He's spoken to Peskov about, of course, the terror attack. And we've got a response from Peskov. It's a direct response to NewsX. Peskov has condemned the Red Fort terror attack. He strongly condemned the source of this terrorism. Peskov has also said, we understand the pain of terrorism and the only way to combat terrorism is international cooperation. What would you like to say on that?
I absolutely agree with this assessment, because the whole world has been affected by terror, attacks, whether it is Europe or whether it is US or America, or US or Latin America or India. Every part of the world, actually Moscow has been affected tremendously. There have been major attacks there. But the definition of terrorism has not been agreed upon so far. This issue has been at the United Nations for the last 4 decades. And the countries are not able to agree on a definition. Now, this is the most important part, that the United Nations adopts a sort of document to firstly define terrorism, secondly to condemn it, thirdly to punish all those states which are directly, indirectly supporting and training the terrorist organizations. Now, that is the only way to combat it. I think this is time that the UN Security Council takes this up very strongly, and a proper document is adopted at the UN, so that there is some sort of fear amongst the states who are actually, participating in terror activities. Pakistan is one of them, which is openly terrorizing states, which is openly supporting and training terror activists all around the world. So I think this is the way out, and I fully agree with the Kremlin, briefing, that all states should come together and not only condemn but define terrorism, adopt an instrument at UN, and which should be applicable universally to all the countries.
And viewers, we are showing those visuals to you on your screens. Our editor-in-chief at NewsX, Mr. Rishabh Gulati, is in direct conversation with Dmitry Peskov. He's the press secretary of the president of the Russian Federation. Now, Ambassador Gaurishankar Gupta, there's another very important point that Mr. Rishabh Gulati has raised, and he's of course got a response. NewsX has got a direct response from Peskov. And Peskov has said on alternative currencies that the share of dollar is decreasing in global trade, the share of national currencies is growing, the tendency will continue in the coming years, and the share of American dollars is also dropping, which is quite a humbling tendency, but tempo will continue. What do you have to say?
Yes, I fully agree with Mr. Gulati that the dominance of dollar, if you see last 10 years, it has been declining. But now it will decline faster, because you see Indian rupee has become a medium of trade with entire Gulf countries so far as India is concerned. Indian rupee is also being used with Indonesia, with Sri Lanka and some of the African countries. Similarly, yuan, the Chinese currency, is being used by China with many countries for bilateral trade. So gradually the importance of dollar in international trade will go down, and now it will go down faster because of the very, what you call transactional approach adopted by President Trump, who is actually punishing the states based on, their purchases of energy from Russia or doing something else in other countries. So linking the trade with the, political stand of a country is very dangerous, and therefore all the countries are now realizing that they should refrain dollar and they should enter into bilateral trade agreements, avoiding dollar either in the countries, in the currencies of the two countries, or some other medium which can be used. In fact, there is also a demand, as you know, to launch a BRICS currency to reduce the dominance of dollar. I think that demand might come up again at the next BRICS summit.
All right, viewers, of course, we are sharing those two very important responses by Peskov to our editor-in-chief, Mr. Rishabh Gulati. It was a direct conversation, and we were sharing those very pertinent issues raised with you. I'd like to thank both my guests for joining me on the broadcast, and with that, it's a wrap on this bulletin. Stay tuned to NewsX.